Long time no see. Today, I'm going to be teaching everyone about some positioning tips that I think that are not too well known, as well as some defensive positioning tips as well, and also even some specific units. But before we get started, I just want to say that I'm about 75 subscribers away from 1,000 subs at the recording of this video. I think it might be because 95% of you, again, are not subscribed. Like, what are we doing, guys? Come on. Okay, so the first thing I want to teach you guys about, or tell you guys about, is these hexes out here, these outer hexes in the corners. After playing like many games, I can tell you right now that whatever unit is in this hex, as in the enemy hex, will walk up to this hex as long as it's not blocked. So let's say you have a goblin here, then he has a goblin in this outer hex over here. This goblin will almost always step forward to attack this goblin over here. It will almost always step here. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because this is probably this hex right here, especially if there's nothing in front of it. This bandit's first dash will go to the back line. Hence, this is probably one of the best squares that a bandit could be in, especially in default settings. Like when your opponent slams just all of his frontliners and he leaves this hex empty and you put a bandit here, your bandit will get to his back line. These flank hexes, this is where this bandit should live, as well as things like really fast melee damage dealers like goblins. And it's even good for a high star archer queen. I'd probably say 2-star or higher in these hexes, especially when there's nothing around it, because this archer queen can target the back line, meaning you can do damage to the back line as soon as the round starts. So yeah, these flank hexes, if they're left unattended to, they could be capitalized upon really well. Okay, so the next thing I want to go over is the hexes that are right next to them, which I like to call very hidden hexes. These hexes you will want your ability units in, especially the ones that need a few hits to activate their ability. The reason why these hexes are so obscure and so underground is because ranged units find these hexes as a bottom priority. Ranged units I've seen have only shot towards either the center hex or the flank hex, meaning that the only damage you need to worry about when you're in these hexes is melee damage. So yeah, if you put a goblin machine here and there's just like a P.E.K.K.A standing and staring at it menacingly, yeah, it's definitely gonna die. But that's why you observe other people's boards, so that way you can decide which hex should I put this one in for it to take the least amount of damage and hence activate its ability, you know? My two favorite cards here, as they've been on screen, are Goblin Machine and Mega Knight. I actually have had a lot of success putting Skeleton King in one of these hexes as well, because it does splash damage to the hex behind. And so if you put it at an angle like this, there is actually a good chance that like another frontliner walks up and he manages to hit both of them. Of course, there's some units that you just should not put here, like a giant skeleton. A giant skeleton, you want it to die, right? You're putting it in the center. If you put it here, the bomb's gonna be the last one to die and it's not gonna get any value. A Valkyrie you probably wouldn't unless the opponent has 2 units in front, but normally you would put it center because that's the center of the board and that's where it'll get the most value. But yes, mainly the units with an ability you would put here. Okay, so that's enough talk about certain hexes. Let's talk about unit travel time. Though I can't compute it completely and like accurately, I know that when a spear goblin has to walk up to shoot something or to throw its spear at something, it takes a while. It may be a second and a half, and that's a decent amount of damage. Same thing goes for like bomber. Putting these units in the first or the second row of hexes right here means that they're able to attack off the start of the round. I don't know how much DPS the bomber or the spear goblin is, and I'll have to look that up. But in your earlier rounds, this could mean the difference between losing and winning a round. There is also the case where, let's say you have 2 ranged units at the beginning of the game, and your opponent has two melee units. These melee units will have to walk 1, 2, 3, 4 squares at most, at minimum, in order to target one of your units. These hexes that they have to travel means extra time for your units to shoot at them, and you can use this to your advantage too. So let's say you have a melee unit and a ranged unit, right? And you see that your opponent has 2 melee units, let's say like a barbarian and a knight or something, right? What you could actually do is slide your knight back to one of these hexes, or even one of these back hexes, I believe. And what this knight will do is it will walk up a few hexes. and these units that he has on the board will walk up a few hexes. So what does this mean? It means that this archer is the only thing firing while these troops are traveling. You could use this to get an extra few hits in, meaning you get a damage advantage over the person. Yeah, so just make sure you're knowing when you could buy time for your ranged units, or if you should take advantage of troop travel time. The next thing I want to talk about is these two units right here. Not the units, but specifically their range. The Archer Queen, as you heard me say before, can target the back line when put up really close to the front line, but it could also target the back corner with these two squares right here. So if you decide to smack on like some units here, this princess is protected. It'll fight against the frontliners as well, but one of its arrows might sneak towards the back line. Let's say like the person had a bomber back here. So especially against things like rangers, the queen gives an early damage advantage against the back line. The second one I wanted to talk about was the princess. And this princess has an extremely long range. It covers almost the entire board. If it's put in the back line, it can't shoot the other opponent's back line. But if you move it one hex up, all of a sudden it could fire at the unit's backline. Use this to your advantage when your opponent has bunched up together backlines. And what I mean by that is, let's say example, we get this as a backline, right? Okay, so these three units are sitting in your opponent's backline like this, right? If this guy has a princess, right? If we have a princess in the second row, it will target every single one of these units. And the good thing about princess is that it does splash damage as well. So especially if this princess targets onto this Dark Goblin, every single one of these units is getting torn to pieces, especially if they are 1-star. If your opponent has a 1-star backline and it's all bunched up together, a princess will completely destroy it. Another thing I would like to talk about when it comes to princess is that you should try and get it to lock onto a bandit every single time, especially when you're playing against bandit. So you basically would want to put your princess on whatever side the bandit is not on. So if you see the bandit is on the right side, put your princess on the left. If you see it's on the left side, put it on the right. And because the bandit is most often in these flank hexes, your princess will register it as the furthest hex it could fire at. And the reason I advocate for this is because the princess stays locked onto the bandit through her dash. I don't know if you guys have experienced it, but when a bandit dashes and a princess is shooting at it, the arrows will actually curve. This doesn't completely counter the bandit, but it does ensure that you will always have a damage dealer locked onto that bandit. Okay, let us talk about defense. And for this, I'm going to talk about countering certain units. The first one being Big MK. Big MK is a really good card, especially when you could get value out of its stun. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure it doesn't get value out of its stun. So the Mega Knight's ability has it jump into the largest group of enemies, meaning that it's going to jump to the hex that is sharing a hex with the most amount of your units. So let's say you have a backline like this. This Mega Knight will jump into this hex right here because there are 3 units that are sharing a hex with this Mega Knight. It will completely ignore your front line after its ability and jump right here and stun. Let's say it was like this though. This Mega Knight will actually stay here because it's sharing 2 hexes until one of these units dies, right? It will stay here after its jump, or during its jump. So what you want to make sure with Mega Knight is that your front line will always have more units or more clumped up units than your back line, long enough for your damage dealers to at least kill it or kill a significant amount of the board. If this Mega Knight has to face these 3, and let's say the Knight wraps here, this Mega Knight won't go anywhere. It'll stay here the entire game until these 3 die, and my units in the back will be able to kill it. But if we just go like this, let's say we have this and the Mega Knight is right here, this Barbarian is pretty weak. Once this Barbarian dies, this Mega Knight is jumping right here and it's gonna ruin your day, like really badly ruin your day. So yeah, make sure when you're facing Mega Knight to clump up that front line. Make sure that they all have a shared hex. Okay, so the next thing we're doing is Princess. I know we just talked about how good it could be, but I'm gonna talk about how to, oh wow, rough day. I'm gonna talk about how to counter it. It's really good, especially when you have trait dummy or just any dummy in general. When you have a dummy on, you could place it wherever you would like. And as we know, the Princess's attack range is the furthest enemy within however many hexes she could fire. But let's say the opponent has a backline Princess. If you place a dummy right here in these hexes, the Princess will target it, meaning that you could choose whatever hex you want this princess to fire at. This could also go for like a low health cost unit that you just want to distract the princess from. Let's say like maybe you're trying to get a bandit to the back line and you're like, oh, I don't want this princess firing at it. I'm gonna put this bomber here so that the princess fires at it instead. And yeah, you could basically make the princess worthless for the first maybe 3, 4, 5 seconds. Okay, and this is the last one I'll talk about. And before I get the comments, no, you can't completely counter it. We're gonna talk about the bandit. You can't stop bandit dash, but I have found that you could maximize it to 2 dashes before it comes and gets your backline. I've found that the 3 out strategy works really well. What this does is that on the flank squares, the bandit can't move forward. And if you don't know, the bandit's max dash, or it dashes to the furthest opponent within 3 hexes. And if you're like this, and let's say you have a backline, let's say we're going rangers here, this bandit will take a dash to this unit, probably one of these hexes. I'd imagine it'd be this one or this one, and then it will dash to your backline. So the idea behind countering a bandit is to put your highest damage dealer on it ASAP, and then to target it with your princess, as I have it right here. This princess will target it, right? Of course, that is unless my opponent doesn't counter that. But yeah, this is the main thing, especially in a rangers comp. It's going to be almost impossible to counter this thing. I think only right now we could limit it. But to answer your question, no, nobody has still found a counter to bandit. But those are some tips and tricks on positioning in merge tactics. I hope you learned at least one thing. Thank you guys for watching. Almost at 1K, almost at 4K in merge tactics. And yeah, subscribe. See you guys.